There's a huge stereotype of stylists never eating, living off caffeine, never sleeping, never taking a bathroom break.
What are some realities that someone needs to really come to terms with?
So when we're talking hair and makeup, it's that same conversation where somebody is now being asked to bring a feeling into words for what they want.
What you deliver as part of your business is the experience.
I love people. I love their stories. How do we tell your story? I felt like I had to have permission to do something creative as a job.
You've graduated from a cosmetology school and you said, okay, now what?
Elyssa, thank you for coming to the show. Thanks for driving up here. I know you're relatively local to this area. Yeah. Are you born and raised here?
Kind of. Sorry, I've been here long enough that it's like I know all the grocery stores in the streets. So
Yes.
But born in Japan, family was teaching English there, and then California, Nevada, then Utah. But like,
oh,
cool. Family's here. We've been here a hot minute.
Born in Japan. How long did you live in Japan if you were born?
Long enough that I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have
I could like sing a song as a tiny kid. That's all I got.
Okay. So cool. It's just it's just a footnote on your birth certificate or whatever, if you will.
Oh yeah.
So you are a hair and makeup stylist. Do you prefer one or the other?
Interchangeable. I usually go artist, but either way works great.
Okay. And this is your full-time job. How long have you been doing this?
January is going to be 15 years since I started cosmetology school.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, you can even include cosmetology school as well, but tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now, either like your interest or the steps that you took along the way, and just kind of your background or your history.
So I was the 2-year-old kid who loved The Little Mermaid, and I wanted to brush everyone's hair with a fork, and I'd run through the house, and I was so stoked. And then I think growing up, I had this idea that like you have to be a doctor, teacher, lawyer, nurse, something with health insurance.
Sure.
And so it's like, cool, this is a hobby. But we still have to like find something that will quote unquote
a real job.
A real job.
Yeah. And so I have this memory as a kid of like throwing out an idea and like going on a walk with my dad and being like, so what if I was a nurse? And then looking at him and waiting for the like, yeah, that's a good one.
His approval.
Yes, completely the validation, the like, yes, this is an approved path that you can take. And I remember like each thing I would throw out wouldn't quite get it.
Yeah.
And trying new paths and trying new, like, what about this? Which now I look back on so much and I'm like, okay, as a little kid, I wish I could have validated myself, but like, that's just how you are as a kid.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there was a moment where fast forward, I was a musical theater major in college. I was doing like helping with costumes and wigs and makeup and just having fun with it. And it was actually my mom who was a teacher. She won an award and hair and makeup came and like got her ready for the award. And my mom came home, said, yeah, you would love this and you'd be really good at it. You need to do this. And I think that was my like permission moment. And 2 days later, I had like left my musical theater degree, signed up for cosmetology school. And then 15 years later, here we are. So there's a lot in between.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was a lot of, I felt like I had to have permission to do something creative as a job.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, before I was able to validate myself for it, my mom had that moment of, this is a real thing you could do, right? And that was all I needed to go and make it happen and just start the train.
Yeah.
It was
That's cool.
Interesting. So like the catalyst moment for you was just like finding out that like no, people actually do this.
This is a thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it gets looked at as a hobby a lot of the times where it's like, oh, I just do hair, or like I do it on the weekends, or people will go to cosmetology school. And I think it might have changed, but I think the rates were like 10% per year of people who graduated who would then still be in the industry. And then
from cosmetology school.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Then a year later, it would be like 10% of those people are still left and 10% of those people. And so there's a lot of dropout because it takes so long to build up a clientele so it's sustainable. And it's just kind of something where a lot of people will start out and then not keep going.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing to see and have role models of people who have made that sustainable and made it work for them and made it long term. And just finding those people has made it incredible to get to the point where I'm like, no, this is it. This is the whole thing. And it's fun to now talk to people who are starting out and be like, oh, you have no idea. That's going to be so good.
That's so
it's
cool.
It's going to be so good.
Well, I mean,
it's interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about like when you say, okay, you finished cosmetology school and then there was all that in between. Let's talk a little bit about like
the 15-year gap.
The 15-year gap. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, okay, so you're a young you've graduated from cosmetology school and you said, okay, now what? Like what was kind of like those first few steps for you?
Ooh, So at that point, the only thing I was really armed with was what do I like and what do I not like? And a lot of it for me, I was fine at doing all of it, but I didn't really love doing colors or cuts. But I just kind of wanted an excuse to talk to people. And
Sure.
so I was like, sure, we'll
Pretty
just have
social.
people come sit down for a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, and we'll just chat. So sure, I guess I can do this in the meantime. And it's fun enough. It's basically like coloring where I hang out and do art.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the things that I loved were that same musical theater background stuff where it's like, show me who someone is. And then as if they're a character in a play, when they first walk on stage, you need to know something about them.
Yeah.
And you immediately know general age range, general, do we like this person, do we not? Are they a good character, bad character, or whatever? And it's that same kind of stuff that I knew I really loved.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that with my cut and color people and being like, tell me about your life. Tell me about who you are. What's translating well in your first impressions? What's not translating well? And how do we bridge that gap? How do we do something with your styling so that you feel like you don't have to give your elevator pitch every time you introduce yourself to someone? It just comes across. And it's a very like low effort, high impact way to make sure that you get to move through the world authentically and get as much as you can from those experiences without feeling like, oh, I was misunderstood and I can't quite bridge the gap. And so that was like, okay, I know I love that. And that has just kind of kept evolving into now most of my work is with weddings. And it's a lot of how do you want to feel? Who do you feel like you are? This is a celebration of who you are as a human. So cool, let's encapsulate that into this day and how you style yourself. And it's been so satisfying to see people come in. Like the best way you can prep for hair and makeup with me is to go to therapy.
Oh,
Go to
interesting.
therapy, find out who you are and what you
Yeah.
love about yourself so that then we can take that and work with it. And so that's like the coolest thing about what I get to do is really honing in on like, I love people. I love their stories. How do we tell your story? It's so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Or even like, so therapy, or even have you had anyone, or do you have recommendations on like the Myers-Briggs, like personality tests? Like,
Yes, the breakdowns and
yeah,
things that way.
yeah, of who
Totally.
someone is.
Totally.
That's
A
cool.
lot of it. So if you took somebody who says they don't care about how they present themselves, usually if you put those people in all pink, they would die.
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
They
sure.
would absolutely hate it.
I haven't thought about
Because
that.
they do have a preference. It's just
Right.
that their preference is that they want to be perceived as not caring,
Sure.
which is a choice.
Yeah.
It's still an active thing that you're doing. And so it's a lot of just, okay, do you feel like what you're doing is successful with what you want to be giving off? Do you feel like it's not cool? What do we change?
So like cosmetology school,
Yeah.
as a person on the outside, that's one of the things I told you not to
Yeah.
do.
That was my one job.
The one thing I told you not to do was to spill your drink. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, we got it out of the way in the
That's
first
all right.
minutes. We rocked it.
No, it's just water. No, it was mostly a joke.
Worked out great.
As an outsider, looking at cosmetology school, like my understanding of it is they teach you how to cut hair,
Yeah.
color, style, and do whatever for hair.
And then go work it.
But they don't.
Great clips.
Do they don't teach you at cosmetology school normally like the makeup aspects, or they do? I mean, I
Yes
have no
and
idea. This is
no.
me asking. 'Cause
totally.
I have no idea.
So it's kind of, it depends on what school you go to and kind of what those instructors enjoy
Okay.
a little bit. But when you're licensed for cosmetology, you have a very large umbrella of what you're licensed for,
Okay.
whether or not you got trained in it. So,
Oh.
like you're technically licensed for basic things with skin, nails, makeup, hair. It's almost like anything on your body from about the waist up, you can kind of work on and affect that area.
Okay.
And so you're going through a lot of anatomy, health and safety, just all kinds of things where the government who is licensing you
Yeah.
is mostly concerned about, can you keep people healthy and safe?
Because there's lots of things you could do that can actually impact someone's health.
Chemicals, and like if a braid is too tight, you technically can cause tension alopecia, and you could there's all
Oh.
kinds of things, even if it's just, hey, I don't know exactly what that skin condition is, but I do remember that it's contagious. Maybe we're not going to work on you today. Go chat with your dermatologist.
Oh, interesting.
Go do your thing. And just how do we not spread diseases because we're working on bodies?
Yeah.
The actual, are you capable and adept at doing the skill? They actually don't care quite as much.
At least not as much as you would
Not
hope
really,
that they would.
at least for
right?
licensing. So you get your training in the basics, and then most of your learning happens after school. You get training, and then you get tested on the basics of yes, you can perform these things to a certain satisfactory level. But if you stayed at that level, it wouldn't serve you. It wouldn't serve you very well. That you, after school, then a lot of people will do apprenticeships. They'll go in and do online certifications and training and things like that, because most of it then is, cool, I can keep people healthy and safe. but what do I actually enjoy and who has the skills I want to learn?
I guess it's then up to the Cosmo to build their clientele, right? If they're good at it, then they have repeat customers, et cetera. Because I think like anytime I get my hair cut, right, it's like some of the first questions I ask if they're new is, how long have you been doing this? To kind of gauge to see if you know what you're doing.
They're already doing it at the moment.
Yeah.
You're at this point, you're already like, well, I've already decided.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
we're sitting in the chair.
there's not like an interview process that you can do beforehand, right? It's just like you schedule, like I go to a haircut place locally and it's like, pick your person. It's like, I don't know who I should pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For haircuts, I think that's generally the case.
Yeah. That's part of where I've always felt like I don't fit into the beauty industry really, because so before I take a client, I require a phone call that we sit and talk for at least 15 minutes to have a like, cool, what are you looking for? What are your goals? Let's see if we're a fit. If you're not, I'm so happy to find somebody who is a fit for you. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Because we want to avoid that feeling that when you're affecting somebody's body, that's a major consent thing. That if somebody, like we've all sat to get our hair cut and somebody immediately goes to do something and you're like, oh, I'm a little nervous. I don't know how this is going to go.
Sure.
Or you sit down and you're like, this is my best friend. I could tell them anything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And we want to foster that feeling. And so we make sure we do all of the things ahead of time to be like, we know we're a great personality fit. I understand your boundaries. I understand what you want from this. And we're going to check in along the way and make sure that's still the plan. Do we still feel comfy? Okay, cool.
So when you talk about like getting licensed or certified, like is it essentially does one go about getting licensed just through a school and there's only certain schools that offer being licensed, or can someone do that outside of a school, or like how does like where are places that people can get licensed? And a second part of that question of like you talked about the health and safety, cutting hair, and once you get a license, does that say generally you're okay at everything, or is it you're okay at some things?
So when you're thinking, so if somebody were sitting in their house right now going, hey, I think it'd be really cool to do hair and makeup. How do I start this process? Depending on which direction they want to go, they might have a couple different paths. I would imagine it's similar to if someone wants to be a general practitioner, do I want to be an MD, DO, practitioner, that you all generally do the same thing, but different focus.
Yeah.
And so if you're going, like I do bridal hair and makeup, you could technically go and apprentice with somebody and follow them, learn their skills, do their things. You would still have to take a state test that's written and practical to actually get licensed eventually with at least the hair side of it. But for makeup, it's a little state by state, depending on where you are, less regulated. So you would just go get a certification, learn your skills as you go, pick it up. Within the industry, the people I've seen have the most success are the people who've done their background education. So going through cosmetology school or an aesthetics program for makeup.
Gotcha.
Generally, I would say a lot of the things that we come back to, when you know the skill of how to do the art, a lot of it is just, there is a face, how do I put the things on the face? When you go through that educational process, you get a lot of why we're doing what we're doing, what are the contraindications, and you have a lot more ability to take care of the person no matter what happens, rather than the person simply being a canvas that you are doing something to. I would advise cosmetology school, aesthetics school, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you have a very, very specific niche that you're wanting to get into, apprenticeship could totally be a thing where you find an artist who specializes really, really niche into that and then go do your testing.
So you could technically get licensed without going to a school if you studied on your own and did got the license exam or whatever it is. Is that what it is? Is it as an exam?
You would have to apprentice with somebody who's licensed to be an instructor.
Okay.
So it would have to be a stylist, a person who has gone through that process, and they still have you must learn XYZ, you'll be tested on XYZ. So there's still a formalized process, but it would just be through one individual instead of a school.
So when you think, okay, let's talk a little bit, let's come back a little bit to your journey then. And you've done some of the things, you graduated, you started getting into the space you wanted to. Tell us a little bit about how the options that you had before you in terms of where you could apply your hair and makeup. Because like you were saying that there was the people who came and did it for your mother at the conference. And then clearly what you're doing now, which is like wedding, bridal type stuff. Like what were kind of your options before you, and how did you come to the decision that this is the one that you wanted to do?
Yeah, there's 1,000,001 options. So a lot of the things that people will first consider is, do I want to work for someone or for myself? And that makes a huge difference, because if you work for someone else, oftentimes they're helping you bring in clients.
Yeah.
but you're making only a small percentage of what that overall service was. You have a couple of restrictions on what kinds of products you can use, things like that.
It's like rent and stuff too, right?
Depending. So there's kind of breaking down into 3 categories. If you work for yourself, you're technically making all of the revenue. You're handling all of the back end, all the admin, getting your own clients. If you booth rent from somebody, you kind of lose some of that in the sense that you don't have to worry about sometimes your supplies,
Sure.
your laundry, or things like that, where that's taken care of. But you're essentially still running your own business. That every salon has a little bit of a different structure, but booth rent, you essentially are just, hey, I'm in the space, but this is my total own business. I do everything. Other than that, a lot of stylists will then be on commission structures. So they make 40% of whatever the thing was, but they don't have to worry about booking or clients or back end.
Sure.
A lot of it is how much control do you want over the situation? And for some people, it's nice to go in somewhere and not have to think about how
Sure.
they advertise or market or do
Yeah, just be like,
that.
yeah, I'm okay with coming in
Yes.
at the scheduled time and do my job and then
I
leave
know
at
clients
6.
will show up.
Yeah.
And then on a different rung, so I guess there's probably 4, when you get into like Great Clips and places like that, they're getting paid hourly plus tips. So instead of a commission, they make the same amount no matter how many people come in and out. There's usually a structure of how much time you are allowed to spend on each service, which sadly, I think some of those places, the fast haircut places, get dinged for quality.
Yeah.
Maybe not even because of the stylist. They just only had 15 minutes they were allowed to spend on it and they had to be done.
Oh, sure.
Interesting.
And so when they are on that time schedule, it's a little bit tougher to kind of figure out what that is. So really a lot of it comes down to where your concerns lie. So are you feeling really comfortable with bringing people in? Cool. Maybe you start doing booth rent, or maybe you start doing something on your own. If you feel like that maybe is somewhere where you would lack, maybe start at a salon and slowly transition. But generally finding a stylist that you feel like is doing exactly what you would like to be doing and then following their footsteps a little bit, I would say is a great way to go, and just let them kind of guide those paths. And sometimes you'll even be their apprentice or their assistant for a while, and they'll help move you through that process.
Like my experience thinking about oftentimes a stylist is like the salon type thing, right?
completely.
Where just like, those are the ones that I know. It's like, they're the ones who do their hair and they cut their hair. And then clearly you talked about the one where, helping with these kind of like on-site type jobs. Like what else are you aware of that you know that's out there where you can apply this sort of same
So if you figure
vocation?
any part of your life where you are concerned about how you're going to present yourself, and or the memories of that day are going to stick around for a really long time, people will have a hair and makeup artist. So whether that is a photo shoot, a business conference, just anything really that you can think of, there's going to be a stylist there. And so thinking about those, you can kind of go through, okay, hey, what do I really enjoy doing? Let me just find a way to do that. So for some people, they'll go into commercial and photo shoot things a little bit more, and they will be on set helping touch everyone up, get ready for things. And it's really fun to go for a huge day being on set, and then you have 2 or 3 days off or whatever your structure is, versus 4 hours in a salon a couple days a week.
Yeah.
For my schedule, most of my stuff is on the weekend because I am full day weddings. And then during the week, I do a couple things here and there. I'll take people for consults.
Sure.
But for the most part, I sleep in the week. It's great.
So nice.
So structuring my stuff, I would rather work a huge day on the weekend and then have some more time during the week.
Right.
But movies are a huge one. Anything media, weddings and events are huge. That's my niche of the world. And then you have kind of maintenance beauty. So getting your haircuts and colors and things that way. But when you're looking at what you enjoy, a lot of it would come down to, what do you want your schedule to be? Do you want someone else to control your schedule and split it up pretty regularly? Do you want to pack it all in at once and then have a lot of downtime?
Are there like private house calls too, where someone's just like,
hey,
I want my haircut, come to my house and just cut my hair there?
Sometimes. Usually for that, I would say that we would tend to see people who are having medical issues who'd request things like that. So if you're, if you have an older parent who can't quite travel anymore, things that way. And for most stylists, those will tend to be their clients they've had for 20, 30, 40 years.
Sure.
And at that point, they're like, of course I'm coming to your house. I need to hear what happened last week at your book club.
Sure.
Of course I'm going.
Sure.
And so a lot of it is stuff like that where you're going in. House calls tend to be more common for things like weddings. So day of the wedding, I'm showing up at their house at 6, 7 a.m., whatever it is, to set up, get ready so that they can make breakfast, hang out with everybody, have a really cozy morning, and then they're off to their event. So most of my stuff is on location, photo shoots and things like that. Haircuts tend not to be quite as much. But it does happen usually in like those medical situations.
And I think it's interesting that you bring up that like places like Great Clips or something, it's very much they have a time slot. I always thought that was dictated by the Cosmo to say like, I'm only giving X amount of time
Oh, yeah.
to do said thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I never thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
I think in earlier you said essentially like there are jobs out there for people that you don't even know it's there. Like
Completely, yeah.
There's someone getting paid to do X random thing that just gets overlooked all the time because it's so like operational or just it's not as like glorified as like a doctor or a firefighter
definitely.
or something, right? So
Like the goal in a lot of those positions is to fall into the background, and we want people to forget that we're there.
yeah.
So like within the wedding and photo world, we will almost always wear black as vendors because in the photos, we want people to completely have us fall into the background. You forget we were there. You always look this incredible. Your skin is always this beautiful. I didn't do anything. You just have a great friend now and you forgot how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to get to be in that world. But a lot of hair and makeup comes down to like if you're really thinking about the crux of should I do this? Is this the industry I want to be in?
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with your community and how comfortable you feel in your community and what role you want to play with that. So whether you go back hundreds of years into like barber surgeons who were doing absolutely everything, and you would have like one barber in the town who knows everybody and they've known you your whole life. They've seen you every 6 weeks. There's still that feeling of this is my person who knows me. I trust them. I can tell them things. And it's a huge honor to get to be that part of somebody's life. And so in the type of role that I'm doing now, it's weddings, and I'm seeing them in some of the biggest, most high intensity days that they've ever had.
Yeah.
For regular cuts and colors, it's a regular check-in every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks in, hey, how are you doing? I believe in you. You've got this. Remember we talked about that last time. You're doing so good.
Yeah, that's cool.
And when you're thinking about, okay, do I get into this industry? It's like, hey, do you want that feeling? It's worth it.
Yeah.
If you feel like that kind of interaction with people might be too much or too heavy, cool. Maybe we pull out into something similar but different. But it can be one of the coolest rewards of being in the industry is getting to be that part of the community.
Because I think there's shows on like Hollywood and stuff, maybe just normal TV series where people joke about their hairstylist being their therapist, right? And just having that connection, right? But that's real, having that connection with your clients.
Well, and I think a lot of therapists would probably, I'm not a therapist, so I can't say for sure, but I would imagine that they would probably say a lot of it's just listening and having somebody who you know is not going to judge you, who you know believes in you no matter what you're about to tell them, and who you know. So my line I will use sometimes with people that I'm with is, hey, can I be your blunt best friend for a minute?
Yeah.
To have that like, hey, I don't think the way they treated you was cool.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know about this.
Sure.
But having somebody who you know is very team you is something that I think everybody deserves to have. And whether that's your barber that you go to or a friend or whoever, that feeling is fabulous. So for me, I get my nails done and that's where I get my like, girl, I have to tell you things have been happening. And it's so fabulous to have somebody like that who, like we talked about with the consent piece of things, because you already have this relationship where you know you are physically safe with them and that they will take care of you. There's an emotional safety component that comes with it, that while they are physically caring for you, you also are able to open up emotionally and feel emotionally cared for.
Sure.
It's so great.
Well, and from an outsider's perspective too, right? You don't see this person every single day.
Yes, completely.
But you're close with them that they can give you advice or can listen to you for X amount of hours.
Yeah, completely.
And you leave. Thanks for the haircut. Thanks for the style. And then you come back and you just picked up where you left off.
Completely. Yeah. They don't know your sisters, friends, whoever that you were telling them about. You can say whatever you need to say without filtering.
Sure. Yeah.
Like you can be completely open about all of your things without feeling like you have anyone you need to be accountable to for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just your time completely. It's really, really cool. So with that,
cool.
One of the things that I see the most commonly with stylists, regardless of where they are in the industry, is that can be one of the main reasons why people leave. Because
what do you mean by that? When they leave, when
they leave the industry, because that is a lot. That at the end of the day, when you're like, I heard about somebody's divorce, I heard about somebody's dog dying, and you know, there's good and bad and all the things, but that can be a really heavy end of the day. Okay, what do we do with all of that?
Sure.
And so the people I've seen who are able to stay the longest in the industry and enjoy it and thrive in it are the people who are able to say, hey, I love you so much. I am so here for you. And also I'm going to take care of myself. So like when I do weddings, that is a huge emotional experience. I block out time afterward to sit in my car and stare at nothing for an hour and just totally decompress, emotionally process whatever is going on and reset. Caregiver burnout is a real thing. So whether that's hair and makeup or nursing or teachers or anything else, that feeling of I've given to a lot of people, I have to refill so that I can keep going and go home and be a mom and a wife and a friend and all the other things.
So I think to that, what are some realities that someone needs to really come to terms with if they want to
if they're thinking about this?
If they want to think about being a cosmetologist or being hair and makeup.
Oh, my brain's going in a million different directions. The thing that comes to mind is having to be willing to be seen. Because if you are willing to love on your people and do all the things, that's great. But if they don't feel like they know you, they're not going to stay. And if you aren't willing to be 100% you, you're not able to find the people who are going to match with you really well. You're not going to build a clientele that feels comfortable for you. That there's something about being willing to be so intensely authentic about who you are that allows this to be a really cool experience and it allows it to grow in the direction that feels right for you.
Okay.
And if there's something that you're holding back that you're like, but I'm supposed to be X, I'm supposed to be professional, edgy, whatever, I don't know, whatever the adjective is, that if we're trying to insert something like that, or like my clients know if I'm having a bad day.
Sure.
As much as I have the emotional professionalism to be like, hey, we're good. We're doing the things. I've got you.
Right.
People can tell if you're kind of doing the like, hey, I'm kind of...
Especially if they've been with you for a while.
If they know you really well. So the difference between being able to have the emotional professionalism of like, hey, I'm not going to vent to my client right now, but I can have you know what? Today was a little rough, but I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for letting me just come hang out with you. Letting them be a part of your world and be like, hey, I'm willing to be vulnerable and human right now because I love you and we have this connection and I've got you. Be like, we're going to reestablish, you can rely on me, you can trust me. And you know that I'm not holding anything back here. You can see me as a full human, all that good stuff, which kind of ties into you're a full human who can also take lunch breaks and who can also stop and go to the bathroom. And like there's a huge stereotype of stylists never eating, living off caffeine, never sleeping, never taking a bathroom break. And so part of that, like, hey, I'm a human. I totally would if I could, but I have this thing where I have to eat a couple times a day. I'm just going to take a minute, do my thing.
Not a robot.
Yeah, completely. And they would never expect you to be. And so having those moments where we have this little like, hey, I'm going to give myself some grace to do this is, oh yeah, of course, go do your thing. But it gives everyone permission to be a little more human. And especially where we're working with people in their most vulnerable moments, even if that's just for haircuts, and no one looks their best when they're in a cape looking in a mirror. That is not a great moment. None of us feel great like that. And so even just if you're having that insecurity moment, to have a stylist who, first off, is not going to judge you, but is also totally willing to be open about when they feel uncomfortable in things. To be like, girl, I get you. I so get it. And knowing that it's like, hey, we're both totally cool to just be normal humans here. We're good. No expectations. You don't have to apologize for not washing your hair before you come. You know, whatever it is, you are good as you are. Come in, hang out. We're good. And kind of setting that expectation that because I'm okay with being a human, you're also allowed to be a human. And we're also allowed to make mistakes, and just having this very like calm zen, okay, we're going to be good. All be okay.
The kind of like moment that I'm having here as I'm hearing you talk about this is to real talk. Like many cases, people look at like hair and makeup as an outsider person, or especially a person who like doesn't either use or never has had an experience with like a person who is like like anything aside from great clips, right? What I'm hearing from you is like I'm having this moment where I'm saying like, oh, what you deliver as part of your business is the experience, right? 100%. Like when people are like, oh, you pay X amount of dollars for a haircut, it's like no, actually that's not what they're paying for. Is that they're paying for an experience that helps them with whatever it is. And, you know, they're getting the haircut, but it is about having those feelings of, you know, self-worth and like getting that extra value. And, you know, so you're just like, oh, it's just makeup. It's like, okay, completely. Well, you know, when it's on your wedding day or it's at a big shoot or it's something that is important, like, it's not just makeup. It is this experience as a whole that you're delivering. And I think it's like, you know, my interpretation of what you just said as you were saying it was like, this is like, if you're going to make this your business, then the experience is part of what you're selling.
Completely. If Disneyland was just a cool place with rides and they didn't do any of the magic, we wouldn't spend that much going there.
Yeah,
There's no way. But
That's
there's
so
something
true.
about the storytelling and the feeling that we're like,
of
this
Disney.
is my life now and I love this.
Yeah.
It's so incredible. But going into those moments, there's almost like a roller coaster feeling of being there for the wedding day, where no matter how much extra time we've planned, we know that it's going to start off being like, we've got the whole world of time, as if you just got in line for a roller coaster and there's an hour wait. And you're like, I guess we're going to play Sudoku on our phone. So cool. And it's all super chill. No matter how much time you've actually reserved, when it's like a half hour toward the end of styling, there will be a freak out moment. There will be it's real. I'm next. This is happening. I'm next in line. I'm getting on the roller coaster. Oh my gosh, I'm getting married.
Right.
Okay. And the goal is that in that time, we have curated the feeling so well that, there's some anticipation, but also we've also prefaced that. We've prepared for it. And says, hey, aren't we so excited? Okay, we totally booked in some extra time so that you get to just enjoy this. Oh yeah, do you want us to go run and grab you a coffee? We can totally do that. We've got time. Remember, we booked that in. Awesome.
That's cool.
And having that moment where we know these feelings are coming.
Yeah.
They're valid, but not surprising. That we kind of know what's going to happen. The same way that like your stylist who's doing your haircut is going to be like, you're about to cut bangs. Your life is going to change a little. Let's talk about what to expect.
Sure.
We know what feelings are going to come with this experience. And we get to kind of walk someone through that process of, hey, here's what you're about to experience. Let's talk. Let's do this. I would say if you are able to do the skill, that's great. If you're able to cut hair, color, do an updo, do makeup, whatever, that's awesome. If you are able to manage emotions, that's when it becomes rewarding.
Yeah.
If you're able to manage and validate and process with people, that's when it really becomes fun. Because otherwise, you might as well just work on a mannequin and post videos, which is great, also fun, but the rest of it is really about being with people.
Coming back to like expectations, if someone was watching this or listening to this and they said, hey, I want to fulfill someone's experience and have a good time and have an influence on these key moments in their life.
Totally.
What would be like expectations of potential income for someone? Like, I think there's two different paths here where it's like you're working for someone like Great Clips or a barber or something like that, versus someone who wants to do it on their own and they're able to price things on their own independently and et cetera.
I would say the amount of control you have over the experience will directly correlate to the amount you're able to make. In a Great Clip situation, you don't have any control over the environment, the temperature. Do we have snacks?
Right.
How much time do I have to spend with you? When I first graduated school, that was one thing I knew I wanted, was 100% control over the experience. And so I chose to go in and like I had our second bedroom in our little condo that I turned into my little salon so that I could say, hey, if I want to book 6 hours with you, I'm going to book 6 hours so we can spend 2 of it talking. I'm okay with that because I knew that was important to me. I wanted to have nobody feels rushed. By the way, we have fuzzy blankets and snacks. And with that, depending on what level of comfort you feel with how much control you want to put into that situation, you can completely customize that. And as long as people understand what it is that they're about to experience.
The value.
Yes, exactly. That they understand they're going to Disneyland. They're not watching a Disney movie. You kind of understand the level at which you're about to have this
you're not going to the
experience.
fair. There's a big difference between the fair and Disneyland, and both of them have rides.
And both are great. And we love them in different situations. And so as long as people understand that, it becomes a no-brainer to be like, of course I want to do this. This is awesome. And by that same token, if you understand the value of what you're doing, it then doesn't feel like selling yourself and like trying to justify your prices. You're like, this is how much it costs me to provide the experience that I'm giving.
Sure.
This is just what it is. And so then it becomes, hey, I love you. I so would love to do this with you when you're ready, when you have budgeted, whenever things line up for you. This is the level of experience that I'm comfortable doing. I'm not going under that. This is how much it costs me to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. How did you decide wedding?
That was one of my questions.
Was going to be your thing, right? Because I think to your point earlier, you said that there's almost like different specialties that people can go into. And so why wedding?
I would say because my personal niche tends to lean very natural. So first thing that I'll do with a new bride who's inquiring to work with me, they'll have a quick phone call. We chat about things and almost every person says the exact same thing. specifically about makeup, where they'll say, I want to feel like myself. I don't want to feel like I'm wearing much. I don't want to feel it on my skin. I really worry about looking like myself. I want to make sure I look like myself, which is...
This is for weddings.
Yes,
when they talk about
completely.
weddings. Yeah.
And photo shoots, headshots, business, branding photos, whatever.
And crying. They don't want to smear all their makeup and crying.
The like one graceful tear versus like, I just love myself. Yes. We're all concerned about like through the I want it to last all day, do all the things. But when people say that, they are like speaking my language. Because I'm like, hey, if you don't feel like yourself, we didn't do it right. So let's go. Let's go. And ideally, I would love to work myself out of a job when it comes to makeup and get to the point where everyone is so confident with how they feel without it that they don't feel the need to hide anything or change anything. I would love that. In the meantime,
that's an interesting goal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would love to live in a world where makeup is just art.
Yeah.
We're not trying to conceal anything or hide anything or change our faces. We're just going, I would like this to be red today. Cool.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be awesome. In the meantime, we have some things that we know we feel more comfortable when we have done some things with. And so in the meantime, we can have that conversation, but make sure that you feel like you and you feel like all of your best features are coming together. A lot of the times I'll ask them about, hey, what would your fiance say about you if they had to describe you to somebody? What would your best friend say? Because it's a little easier for them to reach for than you tell me what's great about you.
Right.
Some people have a hard time accessing that. But I think that's part of why I love weddings, because on wedding days, there's this feeling of being bridal and being soft and elegant and all of these lovely things. It doesn't hurt that I love a good fairy tale. And so having this like princessy feeling. I typically work with queens and not princesses, but that tends to be my niche.
Oh, shit. Okay.
But going into things where it's like, hey, we can take, so like we were talking before we got on our podcast, we were talking Dungeons and Dragons. But if somebody tells me about Dungeons and Dragons being their favorite thing ever, we met doing Dungeons and Dragons, I'm going to say, okay, awesome. We're throwing a party that is themed you. Let's incorporate everything you love in a way that feels so accurate to who you are. Awesome. And so it's not only like a branding photo shoot where you're doing a little taste. Weddings, you get to full force focus on exactly who somebody is. Yeah. And kind of full send. Yeah. And so I love all the things I get to do, but weddings are extra fun because we get to go so hard with it and like really just, okay, do you want to feel like a Lord of the Rings elf today? Let's go. Yeah. Let's do it. This is your day. Do what you want. Like, we get to have so much fun with it. I could geek out about it.
Yeah. No, it's cool. So fun. I think one of the things that
we definitely feel your passion. Yeah. Which is so great.
Good.
Well, and that's probably one of the more interesting like things that just talking to you of having someone be passionate about their job, their career, what it is that they do. That's the thing that we want to be able to focus on and like extract knowledge from those people. They may not be the best of the best. They may not be like just starting, but if they're just passionate about it. Completely. And I think there has to be some level of experience to know what they're talking about, but which clearly it shows.
You have to know what you're doing to be excited
exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the opposite of the passion for a moment.
Okay,
here.
Love it.
What's like the worst parts about? Yeah. The worst parts of the job, like thinking about it's like things that like, oh,
the dark
this
side.
is what I want to do. Oh, it looks so great from the outside, and now that I'm doing it, you're like, oh, I didn't know the
shadows.
You're like, I didn't know that was gonna be a thing. I would say what comes to mind for me has a lot to do, like we were talking with emotional stuff being the benefit of the job. I would say it's also the hard part. So like recovering people pleaser. There's it's so hard because at the end of the day,
I don't please anyone anymore.
Never again. But I would love in a perfect world to be able to like make everyone's dreams come true, make it all happen, do all the things. And every once in a while, there are moments where we have conversations about like, hey, based on the current situation, here's what we have available. Yeah. Here are our options. And I hate that moment. But knowing, so like I had a wedding about a month ago, which like delightful experience. The wedding turned out great. Everyone is super happy. Everything rocked. There's a little gap with timing where the bridal party had something going on and they got there a little bit late. Long story short, timing worked out great, but we were about a half hour behind for getting her into photos. Sure. Whole day worked out great, but that left the photographer coming in and like, hey, is she about done? I'm like, we're doing great. We're going to be just a bit. Don't you worry. Sure. Got it. Like here's my estimate. But estimating timing is always the hardest part of things. And so we're trying our best. We're getting things done. Personally, I will I will never throw my bride under a bus. I will never throw my client under the bus. So I am not about to tell this photographer they were super late and something happened.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would rather have them think, man, this stylist took forever. And if you listen for it, you'll hear that in most situations with a stylist, hair and makeup gets blamed for running late almost all the time.
Oh, interesting.
Which often actually isn't because of hair and makeup.
Right.
It tends to be we stop to give gifts to people every couple minutes during the process, or somebody stopped to take a phone call, or something like that. And so there's kind of an interesting time management thing there where I get to inform my bride, hey, I am so excited for you. Totally go ahead, do your thing. Just so you know, this is going to put us a couple minutes behind. Is that comfortable for you? Okay, cool.
Sure.
And so being able to inform them of their choices while having no control over the choices.
Yes.
Knowing you will be blamed for the choices.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
That
That is
tricky.
interesting.
No, I hadn't
Yeah.
even thought about that. I did some wedding involvement stuff a long time ago.
Photography.
But this isn't about me.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just that the timing in which your activity takes place
Yeah.
just puts you in the moment before the moment,
Yes, completely.
right? So it's like that does make sense when
Oh, yeah.
you articulate it. That's like there's so many things that are happening. Like, oh, so and so needs to pick up the thing. There's these people who are on their way. There's maybe a
Yeah.
hiccup. Somebody forgot the address, or all of the issues that happen before the event.
Yeah.
Happen at the
In
same
that
time
gap,
you're
yeah.
doing your job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have like an alarm on my watch that'll like buzz at me at certain moments so that I know like, okay, we're on time, we're
Yeah.
doing great, or okay, let's pick it up here. With my assistants, we'll have little, not code, but ways of kind of looking at each other like, okay.
Like, are we doing
Good.
good?
Mhm,
Like,
we're
are we
good.
doing
Oh, we're
good?
good.
Yeah.
We're good. But
And then like, you look at it and they're like,
yes.
No. Yeah, right.
yeah, I was like, okay, we
Come on,
need
we're
to
gonna
speed things up. Oh, sorry, that was for the audio
Oh,
podcast. That was me
uh-huh.
doing these signs.
Yeah.
Of, yeah.
In general, I feel like the overall, so we talked storytelling. The thing that
Mm-hmm.
feels really accurate to me is this idea of trying to be a fairy godmother, where somebody's about to have this huge event, something's going on and they need a little extra help or a little extra magic. And so we swoop
Yeah.
in, we make it all better, and then we disappear and they go have their great experience.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that magic, we never want it to be seen how the magic happened, or what we were doing, or the looks we were giving at each other, or all the different. So
Sure.
they're not seeing me pack my bags at 9 p.m. trying to pack my lunch for the next day, getting all the things ready. They just know that somehow within an hour and a half span, they look incredible.
Yeah.
But there's so much other stuff that goes into it. And so a lot of that is the hard reality is that sometimes when you do all of the background work to make the magic happen, you're like, oh, I'm tired. That was a lot of magic to make happen.
Yeah.
And knowing that you kind of got potentially not seen for that in a way that you would have liked. But being able to sit down at the end of the day and go, but that was the goal. That was my job, was to be able to sit down and go, hey, you have a great experience. I would so much rather hold this for you than have you hold this today.
Yeah.
Cool.
Tyler, did you blame the hair and makeup person when you were doing photography?
No.
Good.
Totally chill.
Good.
Totally
Not
chill.
once.
I
would
get to work with some awesome
never.
photographers. And so usually there's kind of that same relationship where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I see you, we're good.
Well,
Yeah.
so and to that point, so in your field, is there like you get in, you start building your clientele, you're doing
Oh, yeah.
things, like is there always now at a point where there's a go-to photographer and a go-to videographer that you're like, hey, if you're gonna book have me be your hair and makeup stylist artist, if you don't have a photographer or videographer already,
I'd
these
recommend
people,
these
yeah.
people. Ooh. Similar to eating dinner, that if you ask the waiter what they would pair with something, they would have a suggestion,
sure.
but it could totally be up to what that person's hungry for. And so a lot of it for me is that if somebody's looking for suggestions, that means that I have more questions for them because I need to better understand what they're quote unquote hungry for.
Gotcha.
Oh, interesting.
So I have certain people that I'm like, hey, I know this person I could recommend is so good at providing this experience if you need help. So photography, like if you don't feel comfortable, they're going to help you pose and help you feel comfortable and get you laughing.
Sure.
I have other people where if you want this to feel really cinematic, awesome, just
Yeah.
a lot of grandeur feeling. So it's very, are you craving tacos or are you craving ice cream? Which direction are we going here?
Sure.
And so I've just gotten to curate a lot of really cool friendships with people so that I have options
Yeah.
for my brides to say, hey, based on what you're thinking, I think this person might be a good fit, but it just kind of depends. So we're
Yeah.
going to go from there.
It actually
cool.
brings up a thought that I had. Like, do you find any level of like either consistency or average in terms of when hair and makeup gets introduced to their planning phases of like before photographers, after photographer? Like where does the hair and makeup usually kind of get considered from your experience, or is there not a consistency that you see?
I think I'm probably a little bit biased because of where I am right now.
Okay.
But I think when I first started, I was probably getting contacted maybe a month or two before the wedding. Now, granted, Utah's different because Utah, there is a shorter gap.
I mean,
yes.
a month before the wedding is maybe like a week after they met in some cases.
Completely.
Ooh, got him.
Which, like, guilty. My husband's amazing. I snatched it up real quick.
Okay. Sometimes when you know,
when you know, it's just great. But so depending on the situation, I was like one of the later vendors to get booked. At this point, I usually get booked right after the venue. They either just got a photographer, or they're about to get one, and it's kind of a like, as soon as we know the date for sure, because our venue's locked down, now we're going to find everybody who needs to be in person on that day and make sure we book the dates.
Gotcha.
So that we don't lose them. We make sure it all gets set.
Yes, when you say where you are now, you're saying just like because of like the level of clientele, the budget of the individuals, or the type of roles that you're doing. Is that what are the factors that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so over the last, the good thing about weddings and the funny thing is that they're not repeat business. You don't find somebody getting married more than once usually.
Yeah, some people, but
sometimes. Hey, one day, but so far not yet.
Yeah.
When we're doing things like that, oftentimes it's very much like relationships, or I'll see them as the bridesmaid at a different wedding or whatever. Thinking about things now, a lot of it is, so on Instagram, I have that place where I can kind of hang out and be like, hey, here's what we do, all the things. So I'll have people who've been following since they were in high school, who then went to college, met their person. It's been years. They're now getting engaged. And so for them, they're like, I have watched this for 10 years knowing I wanted you to do my hair and makeup, which is like so flattering.
Yeah.
And so they'll then be reaching out like, I want to make sure we get this, or like we're deciding between a couple dates. You tell me which one you've got, which is like the coolest thing.
Oh, to have them like willing to choose like a wedding date based off of whether or not you're available. Oh,
that is the biggest compliment.
It really is.
I love it. But so usually I'm kind of right there in that process. The style of makeup that I do is not one that is as common because I want the makeup and hair to take a back seat, that it's clean, it's polished, it's authentic. But because of that, it's purposely not showy. And there are a lot of people who want that look and not a lot of artists who provide that look. And so it tends to be niche enough that the brides who are looking for it know that they need to kind of lock that date down because it might not be there.
I just know that there's a lot that goes into wedding planning, and there's a spectrum that exists. And I think this is one of the things that oftentimes people fail to realize is that there is a market, and that market 100%. The market is large. And when you think about coming into these industries, you have to recognize that you have to recognize where you want to fit in the market and what the differences are between, like, there's a big difference between a $50,000 wedding and a $5,000 wedding, right?
Yes. Yeah,
and the things that people are willing to do, and the things that they're willing to,
what resources are at your disposal at that point. Yeah, completely.
So I think that's one of those things where it's just like, some people will look at different services and they're just like, ooh, that's a lot of money for blah. And you're like, just because it's a lot of money for you doesn't mean that people aren't willing to pay it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, the difference between buying art versus commissioning an artist, that when you buy art, you can get a print at a much different price than if you commission an artist and say, hey, I want you to spend 100 hours painting this very specific thing for me.
Yes. Sure.
And oftentimes weddings, especially what we see on Pinterest, are commissioning an artist.
Yes.
And then if you're used to buying a print, that can be a little surprising to have that price point difference. But it doesn't mean that you can't aspire to, I love this print and one day I want an original. Okay, cool. And so we kind of just set that understanding that like, hey, if you want a print, I am so happy to refer you to somewhere where you can do that and quote unquote buy the art.
Yes. Sure.
Versus if you would like to commission the artist, I have this time available. Let's go. Let's do it.
You have so many great examples of like the way, like the
food.
The park, like the rides to the Disneyland, to the experience, and the food and the requests to that, to the prints, to the commissions, like so many great examples of really just help people understand like the difference in where this value is coming from and what it is that people actually not just want, but are willing to pay for.
Completely. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I can do is that when somebody So like if somebody asks you how spicy you like your food, how in the world do you answer that?
Yeah.
Because you're like, I don't know. It's an experience and not a word.
Yeah.
It's just medium, I guess.
Right.
Low?
Yes.
And so
Because your spice could be much different from their spice.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
And is this like wasabi spice or hot sauce spice? Or it's a different kind
Oh,
of
they are
spice?
different spices.
Yeah.
The ones that
one
linger.
will burn your nose and one will burn your throat.
Yeah.
Totally different. So when we're talking hair and makeup, it's that same conversation where somebody is now being asked to bring a feeling into words for what they want.
Right.
And they don't have the background to know even, like when my mechanic asked me what happened with the car and I'm like, don't make me make the sound. I don't know.
It was like a tick, tick,
It
tick,
just,
tick, tick.
yes, it jiggles sometimes. And so a lot of my job when people are giving me wording that might feel vague or they're trying to paint a picture is that I get to kind of accumulate all of that. And it's the same for any stylist, whether you're doing cuts and colors or weddings or whatever, is that you are trying to take everything they're giving you and paint a mental picture back to them to see if you're on the same page. And to keep repainting until they say, yes, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we're going to create something that's not right. And they're like, well, it was 90% there. And you're like, great, but you're going to live in that for a long time now. And that's not what we're almost there is not enough. We're getting all the way there. Yeah. And so we just keep repainting and okay, yep, this is the one. Nope. Okay, cool. And so sometimes someone will give me something and I'm like, does this feel like you're the heroine in a book and you're running through a field of flowers and you're being chased by somebody like really handsome, but also like it's kind of an enemies to lovers situation? Is that what we're going for? And they're like, oh, yes. I'm like, okay, I know what to do with the hair for that.
I read that book. I know what you're talking
completely.
about.
Completely. And being able to paint that picture for the feeling is so different than like, I'm thinking half up.
Sure.
Like, great. There's a million things on Pinterest that could be.
Yes.
Versus you and I both know, is going back to theater, what the storytelling needs to be, what needs to be expressed with that so that we can make it happen. It's
interesting. Like, it's interesting to hear you talk about like your theater experience has been an influence for your success today. Cause it's almost like you ask the questions to your client for them to paint you a picture for what you think that they want. And in doing so, then hones your skills and talents to then deliver on that thing that they want.
Yeah.
So to that point, I think you've answered this question in roundabout ways, but I'm just going to ask it anyways. What are ways that someone can set themselves apart in this industry to be successful?
Oh, do you mind if I do another analogy?
Go for it.
I love them. Everyone I've loved so far.
Okay.
So.
And a lot of them are food because we love food.
Food's great.
I love food.
But like,
so do I.
if you live somewhere, you're used to all the stores that are there and suddenly a new store opens up, you can tell it's a restaurant, but they don't show what kind of food. Chances are you're not going to stop by. You're busy. You might. So maybe one day you finally make the time you stop by to see what kind of restaurant it is. The chances of their menu lining up with what you're hungry for, the price you're ready to pay, your allergens and food restrictions, their availability, do they need reservations?
Yeah.
The chances of all of that lining up are nearly zero. Versus if they are so intensely clear about what exactly they do, the more specific, the better. So if somebody comes to me and says like, I want full glam, I want sharp cat eye, all the things, I'm like, you know what? I love that for you. I love that so much too. I have a friend who can do that, who is going to kill it for you.
Gotcha.
They are going to rock it. But here's my thing. So for me, I'm like, great. If you are craving tacos, I love tacos too. They're so good. But when you want a damn good muffin, I'm a really good muffin.
Sure.
And so we have this muffin shop where I'm a lemon poppy seed muffin, sometimes with raspberry icing. And we get so specific on exactly what we do so that the people looking for us can find us and the people who aren't looking for us can find what they need.
Yeah.
The better it goes.
Sure.
And
So it's not saying
really loud
yes
about
to
it.
everybody just to bring someone on to make money. It's saying yes to the people that you know you can provide that full experience and execute on what they want and you guys align.
Oh yeah, and saying yes to yourself and not expecting yourself to. If you are, keeping with the food analogy, if you're a muffin trying to taste like a taco, it's not going to be good.
Right.
It's going to suck.
Sure.
But just going to, in the body positivity world, if you're a German Shepherd starving yourself to look like a Chihuahua, it's never going to happen. You're just going to be unhealthy. And if you are like me, someone who specializes in the things I do, trying to be this like blue cut crease, sharp cat eye stylist, I'm not going to be happy doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even if I can technically do it, it's not my jam. I don't love it as much.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so much more happiness and freedom and ease and flow with helping everybody find what fits best for them. And so sometimes in the first couple minutes of a call with a bride, I'll have that realization of like, hey, I think what you need might be with this person. do you mind if I connect you with them? I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And just like getting that going for them.
It's like,
That's cool.
to continue with your analogy, like you could give someone the best muffin in the world, but it will never satisfy their craving for a taco.
Yes. Yes. That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
And so figuring out, what are you craving? Great. Here's what I am. Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see if it fits.
Looking back at younger me, what would you tell her about what she could have done differently, what you would have done better, or what you even maybe just would have clarified to your younger self to just like,
Or even avoided.
yeah, thinking in the context of this career
Yeah.
that you've built for yourself, like, what would you say?
Oh, I'm going to journal about that later. Good.
Okay.
I think the big thing is, everything's an analogy, man. That when we're little and thinking about the future, we tend to like paint this picture in our heads of like what life's going to look like and all these cool things. And we spend years, till you're an adult, you spend 18 years painting this picture of what I want for my life.
Yeah.
And then sometimes things happen in life where you are forced against your will to erase part of the painting and try again. And that sucks so bad. There's a grief process. There's all this stuff. And for us, me and my husband, we went through infertility for years.
Yeah.
And through all of that, I was doing haircuts and colors and things like that. And that was a major life raft for me to just have my people and community. But I was tied to this idea of what I had wanted. And for me, it had a lot to do with family dynamics and my role as a mother and all these things. And I think the biggest advice I would give to myself is to be willing to repaint as many times as it takes to keep evolving your idea of what you want your life to look like, that you're not locked in. There is so much more available for you to want than what you currently want. Because I look at my life right now, we have our sweet little 3-year-old daughter who is the coolest human I've ever met. My husband's amazing. It's so fun. And so I look at my life where I did not think that I wanted to be full-time doing hair and makeup. I thought I would do the kind of Utah typical, sometimes when my kid's in school, when they're older, I'll do a thing, which can be so satisfying. But I thought that's where I wanted to go. And looking at life now, I am so, so happy with where I am. And I didn't know that I could want it. And so I think being okay with whatever comes with life, all the things, but being willing to constantly repaint your picture of what you do want for yourself and what's possible, and to very consistently go, okay, no matter what's going to happen, I know that I'm able to thrive and continue through that, and just trusting yourself to be able to pick up the pieces no matter what comes at you and make more from it.
Yeah.
So the big deep therapy answer, but generally life stuff, just being willing to keep going and know that it's going to get better.
She's going to go home
Your
and write
journal's
3
going to hear more about
pages.
this.
Yeah.
My journal's
I know
really good.
my journal is going to get a lot of that tonight.
Yeah, she can be like, I signed up for this podcast thing and I didn't know. Now I'm crying
Free
in my
therapy,
bedroom.
baby.
Went deep. What's been some your either most memorable experience, or some top moments? But then I want to couple that with what continues to drive you to do this thing that you're doing.
I would say I had a bride a couple years ago who invited me to come to the wedding after I was done as a guest.
Oh,
so that I got
nice.
to watch
that's
the
cool.
rest of the wedding day, which was so cool.
Yeah.
And that will always be one of my most memorable moments, because I got to see her interact with her grandma and her aunts and her dad and all of them
Behind
dancing.
the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like if you were a baker making a cake and then you watch everybody try it.
Yeah.
Oh, it went well. Okay, cool. It was so good. And so watching her, my favorite thing at all weddings is seeing how everyone looks at them.
Yeah.
And it's just this culmination of we've watched you grow up since you were little and we're so happy for you. And so that for me was such a cool, I'd built a really strong relationship with her, and that she invited me to be there for that moment was just super special and really memorable.
While you were at that
Yeah.
wedding, did people know that you were the person that did the hair and makeup?
Yes, because I was by myself. And so there was kind of
okay.
I didn't have my +1 at the table
Yeah.
to
Sure.
be so how do you know the bride?
Sure.
And it's well, and I had my little touch-up kit with me so I
Okay.
could do her lip color if I needed
Yeah.
to. And so there was kind of an obvious you're holding supplies.
Right.
Something is different here. And it's
Gotcha.
well, I just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not typical, is what it sounds like. That you attend any
sometimes.
of
So
them.
I will sometimes do a full day at the wedding. So I'm there for touch-ups, and usually if I'm doing that, I just kind of nominate myself as support staff. I'll pass you water. I'll do whatever we gotta do.
Sure.
But that day was I'm here as a guest. which was not as common, to be like, hey, we want you to not work and to just like have dinner and hang out and dance and stuff. It's like, okay,
that's
cool.
cool.
Thanks, guys. So it was just so sweet.
Is it normal to like have essentially like a tool belt of stuff at a wedding?
Every stylist is a little
Sure.
different. I love my tool belt. I feel
Okay.
like Batman. It's
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, so I'll have like, I will send everybody with a touch-up kit no matter what, so that they have extra lip color foundation, oil blotting papers, makeup remover wipes,
Sure.
so they can take care of their own touch-ups if they need to. But if I'm there, I have an even more intensive pack so that I am ready at a moment's notice to just grab whatever needs to be done.
Right.
But the one friend everyone has who basically has everything in their purse, my pockets become that. So I have
Gotcha.
like extra ibuprofen and tissues and water bottles, and just the pockets
You're
get
just
really
prepped.
big.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that through the day, just anything that comes up, we've got this.
Yeah.
Band-Aids and barf bag. No, maybe not that far.
Barf bags.
but-
Things
So-
happen at weddings.
So I know that there's still the outstanding question of
Yeah.
like what continues to drive you, but another question just came in
Yeah.
just as you're talking about like tool belts and supplies.
Oh, totally.
Does the quality of makeup that you use impact, like, is that a major decision or consideration for you, for your clients, like shopping Walmart stuff versus Sephora or Ulta or something? Like, does that matter?
Price point, no. I would kind of caveat. So the qualities of the makeup matter. The price point when it comes to quality does not matter.
Okay.
So I have plenty of things. So like I have a Neutrogena tinted moisturizer that I think is one of the best I've ever seen wear on camera. It's beautiful. Versus like I had a really high end, won't name the brand, like $180 foundation
Sure.
that they sent me to test, and I'm not a fan, man.
Okay.
And then there's plenty of things where it's definitely worth the price point. They have developed something that's doing a great job.
Yeah.
So most of what I'm looking at when I look at makeup is textures and just how do they play with each other? How do they blend? And I'm way more concerned about, so when I get a product, I take it out of the container, I'll depot it so that I can travel with as small of a container as I can.
Depotting.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Depotting is the process of, if you get makeup, it usually has a lot of packaging around it. So you take just the makeup out of the packaging and put it in something smaller.
Oh, okay.
So I can take a tube that big to a wedding instead of a tube that big.
Gotcha.
A little different.
Okay,
So if I'm
makes sense.
carrying all of my supplies, the back pain doesn't accumulate quite as quickly.
Right.
It's
That's
the
fair.
equivalent of me putting the big shampoo into the small one when I
Yes,
travel.
yes.
Yeah.
The travel.
Yeah,
the travel
Costco
shampoo.
size to Walmart size.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when we're going through all of that, the name brands aren't on things anymore. I have it labeled so I know what it is. But it really, at that point, doesn't matter. It just comes down to, I know that one has a chalky finish. I know that one has a smooth finish. I know this one.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of it is just as if you're painting on a canvas.
Yeah.
What do I need this to do? What function does it serve? And
Yeah.
how well does it do that?
Gotcha. Do clients do they have an opinion of, I only want to use said famous celebrity who just came out with the makeup line, their type of stuff? And
Oh,
you're
yeah.
like,
Do they care?
okay, yeah. Do they?
In the most respectful way, if they do, they're usually not my people.
Oh,
Okay. That's fair.
So some people do. And
Yeah.
there's very much if you are a fan of something, that is so fun to like find a new palette, do a thing. And that tends to also be the person who is looking for a very, you can tell I put my makeup on look,
Yeah.
which isn't my personal specialty. So there are other artists who I'm sure get that way more often, that they're like, hey, I would love for you to use only Laura Mercier or whatever the line is.
Sure.
Personally, I tend to get the brides who their answer is, I don't really wear makeup hardly ever, maybe a little
Gotcha.
bit here and there. I just want to feel comfy, cozy,
Yeah.
and kind of those things. And so they tend to have maybe a couple preferences, but a lot of it is, and this maybe is rerouting to a different part of the question we were talking about earlier. The difference between, I tend to work with people who, instead of hiring me to give them a service, they're hiring me to be the expert.
Oh, sure.
And so a lot of it is less them saying, here's what I want you to do and how you do it, and more just, I hired you because you know.
Just
Sure.
do it. Just do it.
Come do the thing.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of consult on that, and I'll ask them about preferences, but a lot of it is just based on your skin, based on what's going on, here's what I feel like we need. And we'll kind of test drive it and try on different things.
So then going to that was a long way around. I had a ton of questions.
Hey,
Sorry.
I love it.
What continues to drive you?
I would say along those same lines, just trying. The more you know that you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I love getting to sit down and just meet people and work on things. So like you get into a rut of asking the same questions over and over, or you get into a rut of like, this is the way I've done this technique for so long. And so at least once a month, I bring in somebody who I just happen to want to get to know as a human. And they'll come in and I'll just have a content day so I can like record myself trying a new technique on their hair or doing something. And it's a great double whammy of like, I just want to get to know you. I think you're a cool human. By the way, I want to try this. Come sit down for a minute.
Okay, cool.
And it's a great chance for me to just keep honing skills, keep working on things, trying new products. And that process of just really enjoying the physical, what I'm doing with, I just really like this new friend that I made. Is so satisfying. And a lot of what will happen, so when people first graduate school and they're trying to look out at the world of how do I make a clientele, how do I make this a career, one of the daunting things that a lot of people will say is that everyone already has a stylist. There aren't enough people for me to find a group of people.
Yeah.
There are so many people in the world. There are enough heads to go around.
There's a lot of people.
Every stylist has the opportunity to be totally full and booked. That is not a concern. And so looking at all of that to say like there's enough to go around. There are enough people out there also means that I will never be done meeting people. I will never be done. So like in my vision to hopefully eventually help everyone get to a point where they don't want to hide behind makeup. They feel totally comfortable with themselves. I would hope that that's achievable. I have a good sense it might be something I spend my life trying on, but it may not completely happen, which means that I get to find new ways to go through that process, and I get to find new ways to help people feel comfortable and confident. And the way that happens continues to evolve based on current interests and what happens to be going on. And just there's always a new way to sit down with somebody and have that experience. I'm such a fan.
No, I love it.
It's great. No, we can definitely feel your passion for the work that you do, and I think it's great.
Thanks for letting me geek out about it.
No, it's good.
Absolutely.
No, it's good. I think we always try to find people who enjoy what they're doing and really like to speak to it. I think that all of us here on this world are trying to make a living, and it is always better to make a living doing something that you enjoy than it is to just doing something. So it's good for people to see, and we're definitely on the bandwagon of like, we don't do gatekeeping here. We want to help everyone just kind of find their place as they make their way through life. Lots of questions
along those lines. There was there's been in years past a feeling within the beauty industry of wanting to gatekeep and not let people in on the secrets.
Oh, sure.
So like, what product do you use? What did you do with this? How did you do that technique? Which luckily is changing. But the more that we've fought, like no matter how much you are willing to let someone in on the secrets, if you tell them every product that you use, every technique, you will still be a different human.
Yeah.
The way you do it will be completely different. The experience people have with you will be different. And there's no need to gatekeep, really.
Right.
And so if anything, it makes me so happy when I have stylists who've just graduated and want to come apprentice and want to come learn something to be like, okay, cool, let's do it. Let's chat. And there's going to be things that they have come more naturally to them than it would for me. And I'm like, cool, show me how you did that. That's awesome.
Sure.
Like, that's so cool. But yeah, the more that we kind of support each other in going through that process, everybody gets better as we do it.
Yeah.
Actually, now you did say something that triggered a question for me. How do you have like apprentices or like second or third hands or whatever it is that you bring along with you? Is that pretty consistent with your when you go on your jobs or?
So depending on how big the bridal party is. So when I book a wedding, it's often we need to be ready within 4 hours. We have 7 people to style, and that would just not be possible with just myself.
Surely.
And so what I typically do is that I have people who are also running their own businesses, who are professional stylists, who I have worked with. I trust them. I know the quality of their work, and I'll have them come in and work with me on that wedding. I'll go help them with their weddings. We'll do things that way. Apprentices, when I have people who are newer stylists who are kind of working on that skill set, I'll have them shadow me for a while, and then we'll do kind of one-on-one training. We'll have them come with me. And my goal with apprentices is eventually to get them to the point where they can look backwards and they'll be off talking about how cool their industry is that they've been in for 25 years.
Sure.
And they'll be like, yeah. And this one person taught me something one point. Like, great, awesome. Like, I want them to get so much better than I am. And so what I typically do, I've realized that my skill set with my hands is something I can show other people. The skill set with what I can do with people is harder to show.
The soft skills are a little less tangible.
Like the people skills, the things like that. But that is the stuff that I care the most about when it comes to like, hey, come sit with me. I will work with you until you've got this. Let's make it happen. Let's make sure people feel safe with you. Let's do all these things. So a lot of it is like shadowing / me being with them and kind of like, hey, here's a question I might ask in this situation. Okay, do we know this info? How would we maybe find this out? And it's a lot of what I would say people could do in any part of the industry is just find a stylist who creates the experience you want to give and go from there. Go follow them, go shadow them, go assist, go whatever, and just spend as much time with them as you can. And that kind of crosses every industry. Is just find somebody who's doing what you want to do and just go learn and soak up as much as you can.
Is there anything that we haven't asked or covered that you're just like, I gotta get this out there?
Something.
Yeah. Is there something that you want to cover?
Nothing comes to mind immediately. I would say the question that I would often ask my clients if I'm having trouble getting them to like open up about things, I'll typically just ask like, hey, what has been taking up brain space for you lately? Like just whatever's been in there rattling around, what's going on?
Sure.
Because just the typical how are you doesn't usually get there.
Right.
So for me lately, what's been rattling in my head has been learning how to sit with emotions and allow them to come and go, while also learning how to validate myself in that process. So the feeling of, which is, my therapist will be so proud.
We'll send them the link. Yeah.
Right? I know. Hey, Mark, shut up.
Hope you're watching this, Mark.
But yeah, just it's, you know, we talked a lot about emotional processing and emotional support for people and all those things. And so as I get further and further into the industry, it would be really easy to stack my books with so many brides that I get burnt out. But I would get burnt out and want to quit. So I've been really proud of myself lately for learning how to consciously sit with the feelings, let them pass, validate myself for what's going well, take criticism, take feedback, whatever, and be able to do that as a really conscious practice rather than hoping my 5-star reviews come in and that will be the validation that keeps me going.
Right.
Yeah. And just getting to a point where I'm able to like give my clients what I'm giving myself has been a really, really cool part of that process.
Well, I think we've gotten to our time here. So now's your chance to plug. So if you have anything you want to tell, share, socials, whatever.
Ooh, the best place to hang out with me is on Instagram. So it's Elyssa.hairandmakeup, ELYSSA.hairandmakeup spelled out. All of the stuff that I'm doing is going to be on there. The best way for people to come hang out, especially if like somebody was hearing about, okay, I do have some things with my first impressions that I maybe want to like fill some gaps with. I do makeup education sessions where we'll sit down and figure out, hey, how do we make this approachable and doable, but get you what you need?
Sure.
Awesome. But yeah, other than that, just seriously reach out, say hi, all the things. If anybody's thinking about it, I just will always take a new friend. We'll go do a coffee date.
Awesome.
Super fun.
Love it.
Great.
Elyssa, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking time out of your day. This has been so fun.